The Rules Committee will come to order. Thank you all for being here this evening. Obviously, we are here under emergency status. This is an emergency meeting of the Rules Committee. We all know that it is absolutely imperative that we find a way to increase the debt ceiling. There is a bipartisan consensus as we seek to do that. And it's also imperative that we get our nation back onto a sustainable economic path. I think it's very obvious that we don't yet have the answer. I think everyone's aware of that. The rule that we are going to be proposing this evening will provide the House with the maximum degree of flexibility over the next few days so that we can find a solution and avert the crisis that is looming at this moment. And let me say to my colleagues that this is not a step that we take lightly. This is not a step that we take lightly at all. In fact, we are now, as Mr. Woodall regularly reminds us, in the 7th month of the first session of the 112th Congress, and this will be the first time that we have granted blanket same-day authority in this Congress. The Speaker of the House needs the ability to respond to the issues that are before us and will be before us in the coming days. And it's our job on the Rules Committee to ensure that the Speaker has the kind of flexibility that he will need to proceed with this very important work so that we are able to avert the crisis that I know we all want to avoid. So let me say that that the Chair will be in receipt of a motion, then we can have a discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee report a rule that waives the requirement of Clause 6A of Rule 13, requiring a two-thirds vote to consider a rule on the same day it is reported from the Rules Committee, or any resolution reported from the Rules Committee through the legislative day of August 2nd, 2011.
You've heard the motion of the gentleman. Let me just say before entertaining any comments or questions from my colleagues, if there are questions that are going to be posed to me, quite frankly, there are not many answers that I will have at this juncture. As we all know, we were expecting a vote this evening, and the votes obviously were not there this evening. And we do, as I said a moment ago, have the necessity to regroup and figure out an answer to the challenge that we all face as elected leaders in this country. And this measure that Mr. Sessions has just offered is one which will provide what I think should be supported by both measures supported by both parties that will provide the kind of authority that we need so that we can, as we have been attempting to, work in a bipartisan way to solve this. So, Ms. Slaughter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we're trying to work here in something of a bipartisan way, but we've been pretty much left out. I think we've been saying all along, help us here. It's not a bipartisan bill at all. We've had no fingerprints of any sort on this bill. I do have a matter of curiosity I'd like to bring up, and I'm not sure whether you can answer it or not. I agree with what you said. You don't have all the answers this evening.
Which is unusual. It's very unusual.
Oh, it is. I know that. You usually have them before they're even asked.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you recognize that, Slaughter.
But one of the things that came under great discussion last Rules Committee was that you were proud and we were happy that there was extra money there for Pell Grants. And we've just been hearing rumors all evening that that's a serious part of the problem. I hope that's not the case. I hope that the people who would protect millionaires and not raise taxes on anybody or take away subsidies would concern themselves that much that we were going to try to educate more children with Pell Grants, to the extent that we would have to come back up here and change this bill and do a whole new rule on the floor tomorrow. May I ask you if that's the case?
Well, let me say that obviously over the last several hours there are lots of people out there talking and speculating, but it is pure speculation. It's clear that moving ahead with the package that we have is challenging and difficult. I can't anticipate what possible changes will be made in the coming hours. There will be changes made, but I'll tell you that we will look at each of them. We'll clearly have an opportunity for members to address them. But we know, the President of the United States in his July 12th speech said that if we don't have the debt ceiling increased by Tuesday, August 2nd, he's uncertain as to whether or not he will be able to provide the checks for Social Security recipients on August 3rd. And that's the reason that we're here at this very difficult time to address this. So it would be premature for me, Ms. Slaughter, to anticipate what changes might be made in the proposal that will be before us.
And we will know that, of course, in the morning, but let me make myself perfectly
Well, I hope we know
clear
in the morning.
here.
I hope we know in the morning.
And that is that if we are changing this because people feel that too much money is being used to educate the children of America, that would really be a disgraceful shame. And I frankly hope very much that is not the case. And I was saying, what time do you expect us to come in the morning?
Well, we're anticipating convening at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, and
I think we have to be on the floor now.
Yes, yes.
So we'll have to be here earlier. Am I right?
I mean, we don't know. Oh, no. We don't know exactly what time we're going to be meeting here. We haven't announced a meeting here for tomorrow morning, and we have a conference scheduled for 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I don't think that we would have them during the conference then. Obviously, we're in the process right now because of the change that's just been made in the last few minutes of determining exactly what the schedule will be. So I don't want to say with certainty exactly what we can expect on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Mr. McGovern.
Just to follow up on what Ms. Slaughter asked, could you tell us what is the problem? You're in charge.
Well,
The Republicans.
If the gentleman yield, yes, I will. No, the gentleman asked me the problem. You asked me what the problem is.
Let me finish my question.
Okay, the question you asked me is, can I tell you what the problem is?
I haven't finished my question.
Question mark.
No, I'll yield to you when I finish my question.
Okay, you want to ask several questions then?
Well, there may be many questions, but my question is that you're in the majority. You're in charge. You're responsible for the closed rule that we brought to the floor today. Obviously, you don't have the votes. I guess my question is, why don't you have the votes? What is the problem?
Now, that's the question that you asked
Okay,
before.
well, I'll yield to the gentleman.
Same question,
Yeah.
if the gentleman yield. And I will tell you that as of right now, it's apparent that we don't have the votes for a number of reasons.
Can you tell us why?
For a number of reasons that are out there. And
Articulate.
And the short answer to your question is no, I can't tell you exactly why, because there are different reasons for different people. You know, having served and as a staff member and now as a member of this body, that there are often different issues that are raised by different members. And so I can't say that there is one single issue that is out there that we're seeking to address.
So we're here tonight, not having addressed the issue of the debt ceiling for reasons that none of us are able to articulate, because you can't tell us why. I mean, is it because the bill cuts too much, or is it because the bill cuts too little? Is it the right wing or the moderate wing? Where do we need to be going on this to try to solve this problem? We all want to increase the debt ceiling and avoid a crisis. I guess the question is, what do we need to do to avoid that crisis? Who are we trying to satisfy?
I'll tell you exactly.
Right wing or
My extreme right wing or what? The thoughtful, moderate,
more moderate
Democratic.
wing?
Right. Oh, I understand. Yeah, I understand.
You do have a right wing, right?
Well, let me.
Yeah, and a moderate wing.
Okay. Let me recognize myself now. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. What I will say is, the answer to your question is to support passage of this rule. To support the passage of this rule, as we reported out, so that we will be able to have the flexibility to do what the gentleman has just said needs to be done, and that is to increase the national debt ceiling, increase the debt ceiling by next Tuesday. And as of right now, the best step that we have is to provide the Speaker of the House of Representatives with a maximum degree of flexibility to ensure that that can happen. And that's the reason that we're sitting here at this moment.
Is the Speaker...
Would the gentleman like to be recognized, or would you like me to yield to you?
I thought I had the time.
No, I recognize myself.
Okay.
But I will now yield to the gentleman.
I thank the gentleman. Is the Speaker now in consultations with the White House? Are they trying to work out a deal, or... I mean,
Reclaiming my time, I will say to my friend that I can't answer that question as to exactly what discussions are taking place at 11 o'clock at night. The only thing that I know is that the Rules Committee is in a position to, if we have the support of the House of Representatives on the floor, provide same-day authority so that we will be able to have the maximum degree of flexibility for the Speaker of the House to address these issues. If it entails working with the White House, working with our colleagues in the other body,
Thank you.
that will take place.
And just one
Any other-
one
happy to
final
further
question.
yield.
And would we classify this as a martial law rule?
This rule provides the same-day authority so that a matter that would come forward could move to the floor on the same day once it's considered here in this committee. And the only reason for this is that Tuesday, August 2nd, is rapidly approaching. And Ms. Slaughter began by saying that no one had had a hand in this. I know we've had a big discussion of this up here and on the floor. But Speaker Boehner, I saw sitting with the Senate Majority Leader and the House Minority Leader last weekend. And so I know that attempts have been made to work in a bipartisan way by both sides. And I suspect that as we proceed, that is going to be necessary with our work. And I'm happy to further yield to my friend.
This would be called a martial law rule.
No, I call this same-day authority. You call it martial law rule, I call it same-day authority.
It's what the gentleman used to refer it to.
Only when I was in the minority.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear for the record.
It became same-day
I just
authority.
wanted to make sure
once I got-
that everyone knew that now that you're in the majority, it's okay to do this. Thank you.
Once I got the gavel back, that changed. And I'm happy to yield to my friend.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, quite honestly, this is a mess. And
You're right.
It's a disaster and an outrage. Your party ran indicating that, among other things, that Democrats couldn't govern. I don't ever want to hear anybody else talk to Democrats about not being able to govern after witnessing this very outrageous undertaking.
I'd like to reclaim my time. Let me just say
It
that
wasn't
I yielded to you. I yielded to you.
I'll yield to you, Mr.
I yielded. No. I'm controlling the time, and I yielded to my
Well, then,
friend.
Mr. Chairman, I
let me
want my own
let me
time.
say. Okay, then let me just reclaim my time and say to my friend that we're not governing. We have control of the United States House of Representatives, not the United States Senate and not the White House. And my recollection was that last year we saw both the White House, the United States Senate, and the United States House of Representatives in control of one party, and that party was governing. We are seeking to govern in a bipartisan way. We are seeking to govern in a bipartisan way, reaching out to work with this White House and the United States Senate.
Yeah. May I be recognized, Mr. Chairman?
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I hear that word bipartisan all the time, and 4 or 5 Democrats vote with you, and you say that it's bipartisan. I repeat for you, of whether or not we are governing when you look at it from the standpoint of the particular branches. This branch, the House of Representatives, is where you made Nancy Pelosi a poster child saying that she couldn't govern. And toward that end, what I'm saying then is your party equally deserves that same consideration. But following on what Ms. Slaughter said about college kids, I know that this is the silly rumor season. And everything, all of us have for the last 8 or 9 hours been hearing all sorts of things that you may do. But one of the things that I hope that you don't do, and that is yesterday you hear you, Mr. Chairman, bragging and rightly pointing out when Mr. McGovern made the mistake about the reduction in Pell Grants, you pointed out to him that it was an increase, and you were correct. It was a $17 billion increase. If you all come back in here tomorrow and cut it out, then a reporter said to me, and didn't know that I would utilize it, and I don't know the reporter's name. She said to me, I guess it's these greedy college kids that's causing this nation to collapse. Somewhere or another, we need to understand a couple of things. Now, I hate to say here we go again, but here we go again. We keep talking about this bipartisan plan. Let me just take a minute to talk about this so-called compromise legislation that you have been working on. Early this week, you noticed a meeting on a Senate bill, a bill completely unrelated to the debt ceiling. At that time, you also gave us an amendment that would replace the Senate bill. This was an amendment that didn't even have a sponsor, and Mr. Polis pointed that out, or rather repeatedly, and ultimately wound up naming it the Dreyer bill. The unsponsored amendment came from some closed-door meeting that no Democrats were invited to. And then when the Congressional Budget Office said that your bill would not cut as much as you said it would, you went back behind closed doors all day today to fix it. And that amendment didn't have a sponsor either. And now you're putting martial law in place. You can name it from the majority or the minority. You and I have been in the majority and the minority, and we named it martial law on either side. So Jim and I claim martial law is what it is until Tuesday, so that you can go back behind closed doors to fix the fix. I have a question. When are you going to invite Democrats to these so-called closed-door meetings to write this so-called bipartisan bill? And what I'm talking about, the House of Representatives. I don't care too much about what the other body does. We pass things over here, you and us, and it goes over there in some black hole and dies. When are you going to invite Democrats to work with you? When are you going to invite some of us who have just as much sense as all of you to work with you?
I thank the gentleman, and let me just say that obviously our goal has been to attain the votes of a majority of members of the majority of the House of Representatives for this. I've listened to Ms. Slaughter, Mr. McGovern, and Mr. Hastings all talk about the imperative of ensuring that we have the numbers that I talked about yesterday on Pell Grants. And so I would, with the group that we have here in this room, ask my three friends, and Mr. Polis has not spoken on this, if we were to maintain the Pell Grant level of funding in the package, could we count on the three of you to vote for the measure that we have had before us?
That's only one measure, Mr. Chairman. There are other measures in the thing that was a two-step.
So I guess the answer
Yeah.
is no. I guess the answer is no. You
No.
cannot be supportive. Okay, I just wondered about that. Yes, Chair recognizes gentleman from Lawrenceville, Mr. Woodall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you pointing out the true answer to the question of if something happens to the Pell Grant funding, who's to blame? It's the folks to blame, or the folks who wouldn't stand up and vote yes today. You look to who it is who's standing up today to say, yes, I will put my name behind increasing Pell Grant funding, and it's not my friends on the other side of the aisle. It's my friends on this side of the aisle.
You're in charge.
I absolutely am.
Absolutely.
I absolutely am. And
You're in
I'm
charge.
leading, and I'm proud of what's happening. And I want to speak to Mr. Hastings' question, because I just think it's tremendously important. You know, here we are at the 11th hour, and it's hard to get together, period. As you know from your many years here in this body, Mr. Hastings, it's hard to reach across the aisle and make things work. It takes a lot of time and effort, and 4 days out is probably not the right time to start on that process. The right time to start on that process is exactly when we did start on it, which was way back in February with the first open rule on a continuing resolution that this body had ever seen, where we worked together on that. And I would say to my friends, particularly my friends who get tired of hearing about how well we work together when we decide to work together, I would say to my friends, have you stood up with the Democrats who lead the United States Senate and the Democrats who lead the White House and said, you know what, the only body in town that's passed a budget all year long was the House, in a process that allowed absolutely everyone to have their say, that allowed absolutely all of us to speak out. And I, for one, spoke out on more than one budget. I didn't get the budget I wanted. I had to compromise with folks. I had to work with folks to get a budget. Budget I wanted went down. Had to find another budget to support. And that was in April. That was in April that we worked together in a totally open process to pass budget numbers that would govern this House and this Congress for 10 years. For 10 years. And if you think for a minute there's a single colleague on my side of the aisle who wouldn't vote for a debt ceiling increase today to support the budget that this House passed together, you're mistaken, because they absolutely would.
When my colleague finishes, would you yield?
I'd be happy to yield to my friend.
Thank you. I understand everything that you've said, and you and I have participated in a continuous dialogue. And I like the fact that I kind of rankle you and cause you.
It's not kind of,
Yeah.
Mr. Hastings. It's a whole lot. A whole lot.
Yeah, you know, and that's good, because at least we get it out there. For example, the chair put to the three of us whether or not we would vote for a measure that included the $17 billion Pell Grant. You didn't answer my question. I talked about, is it the greedy college kids, and now I'm going to add the greedy seniors and the greedy poor people that are on Medicaid. And the question that I have is, if your plan, we have one that raises taxes on billionaires, would you vote for it?
Reclaiming my time, I'll take both of those questions. First of all, there is not a thing in this budget, as I said yesterday, there's not a thing in this budget that goes after seniors in any way whatsoever. I'm talking about the Budget Control Act. The Budget Control Act that we're debating right now. Right now. It sets caps on discretionary spending. On discretionary spending. We need to talk about entitlements. And we did talk about entitlements in that wonderful budget process that I referenced earlier. And we didn't just talk about spending in that wonderful budget process, that open budget process, that collaborative budget process that folks seem to have forgotten. We talked about revenue too. And you know what our budget said? And by our budget, I mean our budget that passed the House. It said we are going to raise revenue in this country from 14.5% of GDP up to 18% of GDP. By broadening the base and lowering the rates. By putting money and paychecks back into people's pockets, because you and I know that the reduction in revenues is not because of tax cuts that happened in 2007, because tax cuts didn't happen in 2007. It's because of revenues that declined when people got put out of work. Now, don't come in here and talk about where are the jobs, and when I tell you we're going to put folks back to work, you roll your eyes and tell me that's not where the money's going to come from. But let me get right back on point, okay, Mr. McGovern, and that is that, again, no one is going to defend regular order more than I am. And you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right that this ought to be done collaboratively under regular order. But I say to you, it was. It was, and it was done in April, and not a thing has happened at the White House or the Senate since then. Now, what it is rankling to have folks accuse the leadership that is working so hard in this House to put an agenda forward, to accuse them of closed-door partisanship, when they are not only the only ones who have passed a budget in this town, but when they did it in a way that made all of us proud. And with that, I yield back.
The vote now occurs on the motion of the gentleman.
Thank you. What a great
Gentleman,
process.
Mr. McGovern.
My question to the gentleman from Mr. Woodall is that, this so-called great open process that didn't allow us to get at taxpayer subsidies for oil companies or any of these special, tax breaks for wealthy individuals. We were not able to get at that. But putting that aside,
Would the
I just-
gentleman yield to acknowledge that that's not remotely
If I can
accurate?
finish my thought. I just want to make sure the gentleman's on record as being proud and thrilled of the fact that tonight we are reporting out a martial law rule, that we are basically closing down this process.
Well, we're hoping that we will be able to report out this same
This
day
is a
rule.
martial law rule.
I would love to.
If the gentleman's
That's why
proud of
we're
that,
here.
fine.
If the
Please go on
gentleman would
record.
yield, I'd
I'm
love to
happy-
go on
I
record.
don't have the time the gentleman from California does, but I'm happy to, I hope that he
No,
will
I
yield to you,
recognize you.
so you can be proud of this martial law
I
rule.
recognize you, Mr. McGovern.
Oh, I yield to the gentleman. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And the answer is, I'm not proud of this process at all. I'm not proud that when I went and talked to my Democratic friends today, they told me they had orders not to support this bill. They might have wanted to.
Will the gentleman yield? Will the gentleman further yield?
I have the time.
We do not, no one
I
gives
have the time.
member.
I have the time. I just want to say, we went from an open rule.
Let's just,
May-
it's
Oh.
11:25. And we've talked about the leadership's effort to work. Well, there are a number of us who are sitting here who are members of the leadership, and we'd like to have an opportunity to get to work. And Mr. McGovern, don't worry, you're going to be recognized. The last thing I would dream of doing is cut you off. But let me just finish what I was about to say, and then I'm going to recognize you. It's approaching 11:30. We know that the reason that we are here is that we have been unable to be successful at passing the measure that was before us in the House of Representatives. This is a fascinating discussion. But I will tell you, I've heard it all. And I think that at this juncture, we need to decide whether or not this committee is going to report out a rule that will grant same-day authority so that Speaker Boehner has the flexibility necessary to ensure that we are able to put together legislation that will allow us to increase the debt ceiling by next Tuesday, which is the request that the President of the United States has made of us. And so I would hope that as quickly as possible we could move ahead and do just that. I'm happy to recognize Mr. McGovern.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I just wanted to make the point that we've gone from embracing an open rule to a closed rule, which we did yesterday, to now a martial law rule. You're shutting down the process. And I would simply suggest to you that the problem is not within the House of Representatives here. The problem is your leadership needs to be more flexible in working out a deal with the President and the Senate.
And I would say to my
And I
friend
would
that that's
say-
exactly
and I
what
would
this
say-
rule is
I
going to
would say to
provide
my
is an
friends on the other
opportunity
side of
for
the aisle,
flexibility.
you are responsible for putting us in this position and moving this economy to a brink where, quite frankly, none of us want to be. And I really regret the fact that we're here.
Mr. Chairman?
Now, let me just let me just say again, it's now 11:29, and I know that a number of us want to have a chance to get back to work, and I certainly don't want to deny any member of this committee an opportunity to be heard. But I think I'll be giving the time announcements here as we proceed. And let me first recognize Mr. Bishop and then Mr. Polis.
Well, I hope we can actually do this. Actually, Masterpiece Mystery just ended, so I don't care anymore. But I think we should do one thing in which we can all agree on, and that is I second the motion of Mr. Hastings when he said the Senate is a black hole. That's one thing I think everyone can agree on before we take this vote. I think it's a good job. And also, Mr. Hastings, you misunderstood us. We didn't say the Democrats could not govern. We said the Democrats shouldn't use McGovern. That's what we were talking about there. Please.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Boulder, Mr. Polis, to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But before I get to the substance of my remarks, I do have to take issue with the one thing the gentleman from Georgia said, where members in this body, Democrat or Republican, do not receive orders from leadership. We never, and I know that if ever leadership tries to give an order to a member, that's a recipe for the exact opposite happening. Leadership, of course, exists by the good graces of the members of the respective caucuses. Each member represents their constituents, and I would never insult members of either caucus and say that they're ordered to do something. So I would encourage, I'll give the gentleman a chance to respond. I'd encourage the member to, take down his words or alter his words, and I'll yield to the gentleman before I get to my remarks.
Mr. Polis, I'm only telling you what folks have told me. And if you'd like to take issue with what folks have shared with me, you're welcome to take issue with it.
Well, reclaiming my time, in my time in this body and all the members I've ever talked to, I've never been ordered by another member to do anything. It's simply not in the power of other members. We wouldn't, frankly, be here tonight if your leadership had been able to order your members to vote a certain way on this. I think it's abundantly clear that ordering other members is not something that's consistent with the custom of this House. If I can get to the substance of my remarks, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the gravity with which you have greeted the situation. We have 4 days with which to perhaps give ourselves a couple more days, or 4 days with which to enter some sort of increase in the debt ceiling. And why is this important? Today, Mr. Chair, I spoke on the floor in this regard, and our credit rating as a nation, for money we've already spent, is critical to our welfare. The difference between the interest rates on sovereign debt between AAA and AA nations is about 1%. AA nations pay about 3% on their sovereign debt, 3.75%, and AAA nations pay about 2.75%. Interestingly enough, when you extrapolate what that delta, that extra percent, and what the interest costs if we were to lose our ratings from AAA to AA, over each year, that would cost about $100 billion in additional interest over a 10-year period, about $1 trillion in additional interest. And one of my grave concerns with a bill that only has a 6-month renewal of authority is that while it, again, aspires to save, I believe, $915 billion, at least the current version, I understand we might be altering that, the cost to taxpayers and increased interest on the debt alone could be over $1 trillion. These are matters of great gravity, and there are certain circumstances, Mr. Chair, under which I would support a same-day rule. If the chairman can assure me that, in fact, the direction of the negotiations is that this will allow for a solution in conjunction with the President, with the Senate minority and the Senate majority, that would be a direction for which a same-day rule would be appropriate. If the same-day rule is being granted for the purposes of further negotiations within one particular caucus of one particular body with 4 days remaining, that is a counterproductive step with regards to reaching the final outcome. In this endgame, I certainly hope that the chair and other members of this committee encourage the Speaker to move down the road of negotiations with the relevant other bodies, namely the President of the United States and the Senate, to reach a mutually agreeable solution in a relatively quick period of time. One last point. Again, Mr. Chair, I have previously mentioned on this committee that I think that thus far this debate has represented a great lost opportunity for this country. Even when we talk about $915 billion in cuts, what the President initially sought, and I know the Speaker saw it in good faith as well, was a $4 trillion deficit reduction package, a substantial deficit reduction package, one in which everything was on the table, and one of which would have helped get this nation out of debt. Here we are talking about a so-called deficit reduction proposal that, as I mentioned to, with regard to interest payments, could actually increase the deficit by $100 billion insofar as it leads to a rating downgrade because of the short duration of the 6-month period. So, again, I hope that the direction of the negotiations is towards reaching an accommodation that all the parties that need to agree can agree on. But absent a guarantee in that regard, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure you can understand that I otherwise can't support this motion. And I'll be happy to yield back to the gentleman.
Thank you, gentlemen, and let me assure my friend, as we all know, with 4 days to go, we will only be able to successfully address the debt ceiling issue if it is addressed in a bipartisan way. The vote now occurs on the motion of the gentleman from Dallas. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Pay the chair. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Sessions.
Aye.
Mr. Sessions, aye. Ms. Fox.
Aye.
Ms. Fox, aye. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop, aye. Mr. Woodall. Aye. Mr. Woodall, aye. Mr. Nugent. Aye. Mr. Nugent, aye. Mr. Scott. Aye. Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Webster. Mr. Webster, aye. Ms. Slaughter.
No.
Ms. Slaughter, no. Mr. McGovern. No. Mr. McGovern, no. Mr. Hastings.
How does the gentleman vote? No.
Mr. Hastings, no. Mr. Polis. Mr. Polis, no. Mr. Chairman.
Aye. And the clerk will report the total.
8 yeas, 4 nays.
And the motion is agreed to. This will be managed for the majority by Mr. Sessions
And by Mr. Polis from the minority.
and Mr. Polis from the minority. Thank you all very much. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.